to another lesson of the Logos and Letters. My name is Liam, and I want to help us get through this section right here, okay? You get the picture. I want to get through this today in this lesson. So I have filmed what I teased at the end of last lesson, and I'll put that up in its own playlist, and maybe there'll be a continued playlist. I'll keep updating it, but it won't be a part of this one. This one is pure logic, learning logic. The other one can be for applying logic. So let us continue without further ado. So ian degeme o kaios apodothe prosho pote legatai periai rumenon menton alon. So of all these other things that are stripped away, things that are remaining, the only thing that'll be left behind, tu prosho apodothe. Right? So we want what we are speaking about to be the only thing that we consider. Strip away all the unnecessary stuff. Get to what is most fitting, or kaios. That's what we want. When we have a correlative, it needs to be the most fitting. We need to have all the accidents stripped away. Right? So when we have a pair of words that correlate, it's because they get to the point. They speak about each other. They refer to each other and nothing else. If you say bird, a bird has a beak and feathers and all these things. So if you say winged animal, then that has a wing. All right, it doesn't matter if it's a wasp or a moth. It has a wing. Let's continue. Mono tu prosho apodothe. So the thing received, given. Rendered is the best translation there. U rethesetai prosauto. Right, so if we say bird, actually you get the point by now, but a test of whether they're correlatives is this. It will not be said to the same thing. Is it spoken of in relation to the same thing? So that means, does it go both ways? Winged and wing go both ways. Headed and head, like we saw that example before. Here, found the word straight away. How good's that? Kefaloto, he invented a word, Headed, has a head, right? That correlates to head. But if you say human or animal, an animal does not correlate to head, because some animals do not have heads, and animals have more things than head. So let us continue on. So he sets up this hypothetical here with this word. All right, the hypothetical goes thusly. He says, let us take up, for example, that the slave is of the man and the wing is of the bird. All right, let's do that ourselves. He sort of continues on with it down here, but we've done that ourselves, have we not? We've looked at this ourselves. So I'm a human. I don't have a slave. You're a human. You probably don't have a slave either. I can go out and find many human beings that do not have slaves. So that means that it's not necessary that human correlates to slave. Something else correlates to slave. What correlates to slave? A master, a lord even, okay? They correlate. That correlates to slave, and that's the word we use, not human, because if human correlates to slave, well then slave doesn't actually exist anymore, because if it doesn't correlate, doesn't exist. There is no such thing as slave if there's no such thing as a master. There's no such thing as a master if there's no such thing as slave, and you can apply that logic to bird and wing as well. Alright, so let's just continue on. Mega rontos despotu de doulos estin hosautos kai tu ornithos periesto. Right, he's setting up this other hypothetical of the winged thing. Right, a bird can be classified as a winged thing, and a winged thing relates to a wing. If you're wondering why spend so much time worrying about words that correlate to other words, he's worrying about it because he's trying to establish that logic needs to cut straight to the chase. Logic doesn't need to conform to nature. Let me repeat that. Logic doesn't need to conform to nature. It needs to conform to the truth. That's the motif. That's the parable here, if you will. Take away that. If you're troubled by why an adult such as myself would seem so enthusiastic and interested in talking about a winged animal and things like that, it's not really because of that. All right, I don't really care too much about that either. But what I love, what I admire here is that this guy, centuries before Jesus was born, was teaching the world and writing down a legacy where he raises the point, if you read between the lines, that, you know, that the truth is really what matters. It's not really what's convenient and efficient and what seems like nature suggests. The truth goes beyond that. It pierces that, which is awesome. It's fantastic. So I admire that. I admire the intellectual gymnastics he's doing here to prove all these points and the bedrock of so much more that it forms. Okay, so that's where my enthusiasm comes from. So let's just finish this. So uga reti estai to peteron ton prosti. So the prosti, that's the category, right? The supreme genus, the relation, the relative. So ton prosti, so of relatives. All right. You can think to yourself with relatives. Remember, relatives correlate. That's the governing rule. Okay, it's a relative because it's correlating in a way. It's correlating because it's a relative. Megar ontos peterotu ude peteronestai tinos. So the wing of some particular thing, right? What he's trying to say here, makes it a winged creature. Okay, we can agree that any particular slave is a slave of some master, right? So the key is to have these words like peterotu, right, and use that properly. Hoste deimen apodidonnai, right, full stop there. Pros ho pute okaios legetai. Right, here we have it. Here we have the fittingly said relation, said in relation to the same thing. Kan menon nomai kai menon. Right, he's speaking about the name, the established name, the name that's lying around. Praidia, easily. Now, I feel sort of guilty. Last time I didn't translate this literally, but praidia means easily or simply. He apodosis genetai. So when we have this name lying around, established, it's easy to give a rendering of what it is, of what the correlatives are. Meontos de anakaionisos onomatopoian. So if it's not the case that meontos, if it's not the case that there's a name lying around, which is easily used to establish the correlatives, all we need to do is onomatopoian, make the name. Okay, it's actually anakaion. It's necessary. We can't go around without having established the name. So if you want to come up with your own words to establish these correlatives, go for it. Okay, if you're inventing your own language like Tolkien did and people like to do, make sure you have words in your made-up language that are correlatives. Okay, I'm sure Tolkien had them in his Elvish, his different kinds of Elvish. Sure, he had correlatives there. And he made names. Huto de apotidomen faneron hoti pantada prosti pros antistrafonta legetai. Let me clear this up, because this is, piece de résistance. This is the cherry on top right here. So, huto de apotidomen, right? The thing in thus, huto, and thus the thing given clearly is referring to what is spoken about in all these cases. If we make a name for or have a name established, then in all these cases, pantada prosti pros antistrafonta legetai, all of these relations will be said to correlate. Right? Kephalotu, here's another one. Yeah. the rutted, okay? Make words, be precise, conform to the truth. Don't worry about conforming to nature. No, don't worry too much about what feels right, okay? What is right? What is correct? If something feels right, double check that it is right, okay? That's why if anybody asks me, how has your thinking changed, or how has your mind changed after so many hours of studying logic and whatnot, the first thing that I would say to any of them who ask me such a question would be this: I don't trust my first thoughts anymore. Everything that I want to say, I really don't trust, unless it's something that's automatic and I've said 100 times before. You know what I mean? Those everyday mundane things, like I trust those, of course. When I say it's hot today, I don't have to think twice about that, okay? That'd be some weird kind of psychosis, right? I'm not saying that. I'm saying every time I need to think a new thought, I actually really don't want to say my first thought anymore. It's like when you stand next to a high ledge, all right? You don't want to take another step towards it, right? Because you're scared of what might happen. That's the exact same feeling I get when it comes to my thoughts these days about anything new. I'm slower to speak in that way. I'm more cautious to speak, and you can probably hear that when I'm teaching his lessons. I pause on words a lot because I've never had to teach any of this to anybody, and I'm very, very careful that I do the absolute best job for you guys and whoever's listening, and I say only what's true and what's correct, and I always trust my second thoughts better, right? You spend time allowing that second thought to come through, and that's usually the better thought. The first thought is always rough. It's usually, I hit the target, but I haven't even scored any points, okay? We don't have to hit bullseyes every time. If we hit bullseyes every time, we're some form of god, right? But you got to score some points. So that's what I would say. And this is a perfect example of why this happens. Your precision with language and the urgency to be precise will eventually get to the point where it's unconscious, and you were just like, I think you would there are some listeners who experience the same thing as myself, where we just don't trust what we first say or what first comes to mind, and we would rather just have like 2 minutes of silence before we say anything about it. Well, I personally would. When I speak to myself now, like, if you go for a walk and you sort of have an inner monologue, I like to take time and like forming an opinion on things. So, which is great. It's not so great if you're a person who's on the internet and teaching things and whatnot, because people have an expectation that you speak quickly and rapidly and all those sorts of things. So there's pressure there. But I'm more thankful for it than displeased with it, because I say less silly stuff these days, if I put it like that. So I'll leave that there. As always, thank you so much for listening. Si semper fortis in opere tuo, and I'll see you next time.